send me down all kinds of different rabbit trails of reading books. And speaking of books, today I thought I'd take a little bit of time to talk about my book list. So I have a Wisper book list updated for 2021, and kind of what I've been reading and what I like, the books I've read over the years. I kind of try to group them together. But if you're tuning in for the first time, you may not know I have dyslexia. So my mom knew something was wrong with me before I started school. She would sit me down in front of Sesame Street, and I would play with my toys during Sesame Street, wanting nothing to do with learning any letters or anything, except for the numbers, right? I would watch the numbers, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I love that. But then I would watch the commercials. I would put down my toys and literally watch the commercials, but wanted nothing to do with Sesame Street. She kept going into the school and said, no, there's something wrong. And they're like, no, he's just a late bloomer. I struggled through first and second grade. I was bored out of my mind in math class because I couldn't be in the highest math class because I couldn't read the word problems. But the medium math class was easy for me. And then at the end of third grade, they finally did testing and they said, oh, wow, your son has dyslexia. And my mom's like, yeah, I kind of knew something was wrong. But back then, dyslexia wasn't that big of a known thing. And it doesn't mean that, it sounds like it's a disability. And I look at it and say, no. The dyslexia is my biggest advantage. I am so thankful I have it. Maybe back in elementary school and high school, I didn't think that way, college too. But when I got out into the real world, it's amazing. Everything I was graded on and struggled with in school, running a business, I could legally hire people to do, right? I hired somebody to read my emails and help me with that. I hired somebody to write the proposals and all those things. So it's definitely interesting how when you go through school, they grade you on everything you were bad at when you have dyslexia. And then out in the real world, everybody wants your different perspective, your work ethic and everything. So I would just encourage anybody with dyslexia that it isn't a disability, it's an advantage. And but that's a mindset shift that you have to have. So because I have dyslexia, I actually listen to all my books. I listen to about a book a week. I can listen at 3 times speed while I'm driving. So my 15-minute drive to the office, I actually get 45 minutes worth of a book done. And I really, really like consuming that knowledge and that information, and then taking the best of what I've learned and applying it to the business. Sometimes very successfully and sometimes not so successfully. So today we're going to go over my book list. Like I said, I've read almost 500 books in the last several years. But I then take that and I pick my favorite ones, and I've broken them down. And I'm going to go kind of just list by list. I won't talk about every book, but I'll talk about some. These are my favorite ones out of my list. And I need to update. I've read quite a few over the holiday, the Christmas time that I need to get on here that I thought were just outstanding for where I am today and where maybe some people are. So the first section is entrepreneurship. This is a word that is probably overused nowadays. And it just anybody who wants to start a business. And I read a book called The Innovation Stack. And in that book, he talked about how the entrepreneurship is probably, the definition has changed. Before, it used to be somebody who did something that no one else was doing, and that to really, really push the envelope and was, coming up with brand new innovative things. And now entrepreneurship means the person who started the coffee shop down the street, they copied another coffee shop exactly, which I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that at all. It does take a certain somebody to start a business and everything for sure. But it's just interesting, his take on that entrepreneurship. So I really like the Street Smarts. This was a pretty short read, and it talked about, all those things that you don't really learn when you go get your MBA or you run, a small business. It's kind of his journey through and their journey through just how to work and have those street smarts, which I thought was great. It's kind of ironic that you're trying to learn street smarts through a book, but it's a good thing to know that we're not alone when we struggle with some of the things. The next one, Entree Leadership. I really like this one from Dave Ramsey. I love all of his books. I follow all of his teachings and everything. And the Entree Leadership, some of my best employees are actually people who have run a business in the past. And in fact, I was just talking to one of our new GMs, and he was like, "Oh yeah, he ran a franchise sandwich shop." and just talking to him about the stories about, he's like, oh yeah, it's, every dollar makes a difference, especially in fast food, because there's not a lot of margin. And he's like, yeah, the families that would come in and buy one drink and then use the free refill to get, have everyone at the table use the drink, and those things. And that's something that a lot of people don't really think about. But then as an owner, you're thinking about all of that. And then when they come work for another company, they have much, much more respect for the decisions that have to be made. They're way less of a Monday morning quarterback. But Dave Ramsey, he takes it and says, okay, well, I want those people that they have that entrepreneurial spirit and the leadership, and he enables them and he supports them, and he has them thrive and gives them that support. So it's not so scary to go out and start your own business, but you're part of his company. And he's got a lot of great principles in there that I really, really like. And that's why I kind of put that on here. Winners never cheat. This is a good one. This is one where, your word is your word. And in today's society, it doesn't matter what your word is. You can say one thing and then, 6 minutes later you say another and contradict yourself. And it's just, everything's just now, and people have a short-term memory. And this one, I really liked what he had to say. A lot of the principles that I try to live my life by are in there. And about doing deals and not walking away when you agree to something, but the contract isn't signed and then things change. It was, again, a short read, and I just thought it was really good to set the foundation to start. Anybody who wants to go out and start their own business, it's kind of like, hey, here's the level set of how you should kind of run your business and the principles you should have. Never split the difference in negotiation. I have not read very many books on negotiation. I've been told that I'm really, really good at negotiation. And I feel that I'm not. I don't feel that I negotiate at all. I lay out my cards and tell you where I am and why I can't do something. And it's just, this is what I have. And I have, I guess, walk away power, right? Where I'm willing to walk away from a deal. And this never split the difference is amazing. Chris Voss, the way he pulls it all together and what he does, and a lot of the things he teaches were things I was doing, but he has a whole formal process, and it's really, really good. I really learned a lot, and it's a fun book to read. And then not even like in business, but to go home and kind of quote unquote negotiate with your family or your spouse or your kids. And it's neat to see his principles work out and how you do those. So that's a really, really good one. Another segment that I really like is employee engagement. This is something that just everything that I've read about, nowadays, it's how do we engage the employees? It's not just good enough to say, shut up and come to work. You need to engage them, and you need to go to where they are. And when we were renovating the building that we're in now, about 3 years ago, I read a lot of these books, and what was interesting is they all had a segment on engaging your employees with your office, right? Do you need a commons area? Do you need to provide lunch every day? What do you need to do? And do you need a pool table? And they all were saying something different, and they all kind of contradicted. Sometimes the books contradicted themselves. But the only thing that they all agreed upon is that people like views of nature, and they like lots of windows, natural light. And I'm like, okay, sweet. I agree with that. So we put a lot more windows in our building, and we have views of, we're surrounded by cornfields. So that worked out well. But when you read these different books, it's interesting. A lot of those books that I read that have like employee engagement on the title don't really get to the nuts and bolts of what employee engagement. If you think back to your college years or your high school years or even your elementary, a lot of those teachers that were just really, really tough on you, or really, really like believed in you and expected more out of you, those are the ones you remember, and those were the ones you were fond of, and those were the ones that you're like, hey, that they really helped shape me who I am, and you were engaged in class, and you did those things. So these are kind of the books that I have pulled out of there that I thought were really, really good. And Multipliers is just absolutely amazing book. I read it twice when I read it. I read it through once and said, wow, that was so good. Let me read it again now that I kind of understand the whole book. And it just talks about, are you a multiplier? Meaning when you come in contact with people, do you multiply them? Or are you a detractor, right? Are you taking away? Are you a negative influence on them? And I want nothing more than to be a multiplier for everybody I interact with. And that book gives you a lot of really, really good examples of how to change your mindset to be able to do that. Radical Candor is another really good one. I am adverse to confrontation, although I'm getting much better at it. And I would just assume not say something than say something, even when maybe some of my core, right? We talked about build to lead, my core is challenged, and I'm getting much better at saying, no, this is my core and this is what I believe, and there's a right time to do that. And Radical Candor gives you a mechanism to do that and helps you understand when's the right time to speak up and the right way to speak up, right? There's some subtle ways that you can speak up that don't just turn people off, and something that I don't know if that's really, even though what you said was correct and what they needed to hear, the way you said it, it basically made them basically turn off and not listen to you. Turn the Ship Around. That's another really good one. It's a military one, and it's neat how he took something. It's kind of a self story of how he took the worst ship in the Navy and made it one of the best ones, and how he did that and what happened. The small things that he had to do, and I just think it's got really, really good examples in it that you can follow. The next category I have is hiring. Hiring is something I get tons and tons of questions about. Top Grading, I think, has been my best book, hands down. It was just a game changer for us as to how we improved our hiring, what we did, and how we did it. So I highly recommend. It's a process to your hiring. It kind of proves to you that it's worth spending the time getting the right people in the door. And then Simon Sinek, he's got a ton of great books, but start with why. And that kind of helps you frame up why you're doing what you're doing, and allows you to maybe sort out who's the right fit. It's just because somebody doesn't fit your corporate culture doesn't mean they're a bad person. But if you have 20 different people with 20 different core values, and they don't know why they're there, that becomes very unruly. And you as a leader are responsible for getting everybody aligned and getting them in going down the right, rowing in the same direction. They don't have to be robots, right? You don't want robots, people who all think the same, but you want people to at least understand why they're there. And I think Simon Sinek really helps you answer some of those questions as you get into your hiring. The next one, I'm not a salesperson. I don't like to sell, although I've been told I can sell ice to Eskimo, and that's probably why I'm a good negotiator too and a good salesperson. I don't think I'm selling. I truly want to help the customer, and this is the Blue Oceans. I think was probably my favorite book on selling, and it talks about, if everybody's going this way and selling one thing, what do you need to do to go the other way? What do you need to do? And when you create a blue ocean, if you're the only one selling a product, then you kind of don't have any competition, and you kind of have a leg up. And I love the way they talked about it. And it's just like a different way of thinking about things. And I loved how they brought that together. So I think that's probably my favorite book on selling. I have the other one here, Selling It Through Tough Times, which I know a lot of people are in tough times now. And it was a good solid read as well. Strategic Thinking. This is probably my favorite place to read books. Obviously, Gino Wickman. I've talked about his Traction and EOS and how we use that here. But really, what I like about these, like the Built to Sell and the E-Myth, and Thinking in Bets, is it's really meant to not teach you how to think strategically. What I like are the books that teach me how to help me change my thinking, think about things differently. I'm currently reading a book right now called What's Your Problem? And it's talking about what is the problem. And if you frame the problem differently, you'll have a different solution. And a lot of these books on here are really that way. And it's fun to think about this. And any of the Malcolm Gladwell books, he's got quite a few. They're really, really good. I love the way he writes, and I love to listen to his books. And then I love going home and challenging my kids, right? Because they're at school, they're learning, and then I kind of take some of the nuggets from these and I ask better questions. I understand maybe how to think slightly different and what we need to do. And I really, really like the way these books work on the way you think and how you do it. Change management. I have both here, Dan and Chip Heath, Switch and Decisive. Both of these books, if I could have every single person in my company that is resistant to change, even those that are embrace change, These books spell it out. It's kind of a psychology flavor to the books that really spell out how to help with change management. And I love that. I think they're really, really good. They have a couple other books as well, but I didn't put them on here, but those are two really good ones. Leadership, this is another thing that's really hard for some people to grasp because it's a lot of touchy-feely. And well, what makes him a good leader or her a good leader? Well, I don't know. I mean, just she's a good leader, and it's hard for them to really understand what that is. So I like the leadership books from John Maxwell. He has a ton of books out there, and they tend to kind of repeat and go over some of the same concepts, which I guess is good because people pick up things differently as they're presented slightly different. But I love his 360-degree leader. My favorite book of his is probably 5 Levels of Leadership. It's so interesting to see how you can be a level 2 leader in one group and a level 1 leader in another, or a level 4 in another, and how that all changes. And it's the first book I ever read that really gave me tangible understanding of characteristics of what a leader was at these different levels, and allowed me to aspire to be a level 5 leader, and what is that all that means with that, and how do I get there and everything. So I really, really recommend that book. No matter what kind of leader you are, I really highly recommend that. And then 4 Obsessions of an Extraordinary Executive. Really, I would say any of the Patrick Lencioni books. He writes in fable form, so you're listening and reading to a story, not necessarily a how-to book. He's very, very captivating, really, really fun to listen to him and think about everything that you have there. So my last page of books here, I know it's a long list, but these are all just really, really good ones that I like. On the psychology side, the strange title of What Shamu Taught Me About Life, Love, and Marriage. I think this one was neat because you think it's like, oh, wait a minute, is this like about training your spouse or training your kids? When you look at the title, and it kind of was, but it was really, really good. Some insights that I don't think I had before, and some of the simple things you can do to tweak how you interact with people and make it better. Another one I really like, it's actually a very old book, Outwitting the Devil, by Napoleon Hill. It's literally kind of like a conversation he has with the devil. And it's older, but it's so like just spot on for today, even though I think it's maybe 70, 80 years old. I can't remember now, but it was pretty written a long time ago, only kind of recently published. And it's a very, very good one to listen to and think about, just his discussion about outwitting the devil. Communication, this is another one where a lot of leaders need help, is how they communicate. Leading out loud, world-class communication, those. I wasn't sure I was going to get a lot out of world-class communication, and it wasn't until I read the entire book that I realized actually how important it was and how good it was to framing up the way we communicate and how we can communicate better. My personal favorite one in this category, though, is Crucial Conversations. This one, we have a introduction kind of class for all of our employees, and we go over this Crucial Conversations. And this one also then extends on to your spouse and your family and your neighbor, and how do you have a crucial conversation about the fence being too high or on the wrong side of the property line and everything. It's a great book. Company Health, Patrick Lencioni, again, any of his books. And the fish books, there's, I think, 3 fish. I've actually been to the place in San Francisco where they wrote this about, or sorry, is it San Francisco or Seattle? Seattle, where they wrote this about, the fish market there. And it's just really neat, one, to see it. And then 2, one of their examples in the book was actually at a hospital here in St. Louis, where we're from. So it was kind of neat to see that. And the concepts they have in there basically is everybody can love the job they do, just you choose the attitude. And you choose what attitude you bring to the table. And if you hate doing what you're doing, then why are you doing it? Life is too short to do something you hate to do. And it isn't really that you hate doing what you're doing. It's your choice that you've brought to the table. So I love that. Marketing. Trust me, I'm lying. That couldn't be more true than today, when it's hard to believe what you really see out there. And there's so many easy ways to get media out there. And is it true or is it not? For sure, it's an interesting one, kind of how they can manipulate things. Family health, obviously, Patrick Lencioni there, he's got a family-driven one. The Bible, and Total Money Makeover by Dave Ramsey. The Talent Code was an interesting one. So I started swimming when I was 15, very, very late. Still made it to the U.S. national team and had a great career swimming, but I started very, very late. And I had that in my mindset when my wife, she was a swimmer as well, and she wanted our kids to start early. And I'm like, no, let them be kids and they can just play and have fun. And but when you read the Talent Code, it talks about, to be an expert in anything, you have to spend, 10,000 hours doing it. And what does that look like and everything? And that kind of changed my thinking about, well, wait a minute, if my kids do want to be really good swimmers, because they were driving it, not me. I wasn't pushing them into swimming. We taught them to swim, and then they were the ones that wanted to keep doing swimming. So they really had, the Talent Code helped me see that and helped me really understand what it takes to be an expert or a professional in whatever career you take. So that's kind of my book list. If you have any questions about any of these, we can spend one of our sessions talking about one of them specifically. I would highly recommend that you read these. I'm sure there's some category that fits your fancy. I like to jump around and not just read all business books. I'll read some history books and then some psychology books and all kinds of things. But I typically gravitate towards the kind of self-help business books. So this is a quote I love. You'll be the same person in 5 years as you are today, except for the people you meet. And normally when I give presentations, I'm in a big group and I'm like, hey, the people you meet, but we're all kind of virtual now. But the people you meet and the books you read. So I would highly recommend that you read books. There's a link to the survey if you want to fill out any topics that you would like to have me talk about, or if you have any questions individually, if you want to take some of those offline, I'm happy to talk with you. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, or you can catch us right here on Facebook Live. As we go through 2021 and try to learn and share together. I'm looking forward to having a lot more guests on with me and covering topics that are important to you. So with that, I'll sign off for today, but thanks so much for being here and look forward to interacting with you over the virtual channels in the coming year. Thanks so much.